women know that they're seen in a different light, or their skills are seen in a different light, or they're not recognised to the same degree that some of the men are. And it's a real frustration because, you've got this little voice in your head saying, well, I'm okay, I'm doing a good job.
How come you hear features down the road getting,
Yeah, that's right. Young Joe Blow comes into court, a post, and you think, you mean that's your best shot?
Yeah.
How come he's getting it? So, and then the next sort of thought is, well, that's okay, Helen. You just got to settle for the fact that you're a second-rater. And then, it's kind of this downward side. Maybe you're just a second-rater, and so you just got to be willing to be on the second rung of the ladder and not the top of the profession, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And you just kind of convince yourself, and you go, no, I'm not, I'm really good at it. So you just have this whole constant...
schizophrenic jumping backwards and forwards all the time, I know. And because as women too, you're socialised to be more questioning of yourself and to go, oh, maybe I'm doing this wrong. Exactly. Maybe I've misunderstood this and, rah, 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 rah. And so there's an enormous amount of subliminal discrimination.
I've often felt it was an advantage to be the only woman in the courtroom. You get noticed if you're halfway good. And you're remembered because you stand out amongst a sea of grey suits. But on the other hand, I made that comment to a solicitor who's briefed me for 18 years recently, and he said, oh yes, Sam, he said, but you don't know the ones I'm not able to send you because the client will say, oh, we want a bloke. He said, I can often talk them out of it, but I can't always. And I thought, well, look, that's true. None of us know what we might not be getting because of that underlying old-fashioned views, the 1950s views, as you say, that might be there. And I think that may be an answer also to the fact that whilst in some areas women might get more work, and at some levels, and if you perhaps fall within people's preconceptions of what firm you should have come from, or even what school you went to, or whether you look like they think a female version of a barrister might look and wear the white suit, but maybe those who don't fall within all of those particular categories miss out. And they're the ones that shouldn't be missing out if they're halfway good as advocates, just like the halfway good blokes don't miss out. So it's not just about the really good ones, it's about everybody getting a fair go, as Fran was saying.
Simone?
In my naivety, I didn't believe that was going on. Until yesterday, I got a phone call from a solicitor. And he rang me and he said, I don't know you, but I have read in the media about the Australian Women Lawyers Survey in the AFR and the Australian, and I know that women are missing out on serious trial work. I said, and I'm very upset about it. I've got a client who doesn't want to brief a woman who I've put forward, a senior woman who I think is the best person for the job, and I'm not happy about it. I've got 2 daughters studying law, and I don't want them to inherit this situation, this state of play. So I want to know, where do I find those statistics? I told him where on the WBA, the VicBar website, click WBA, click publications, and the AWL survey is there. And then he said, great, that's fine. I'm going to send the client a letter pointing out the statistics in that AWL survey and tell him that I stand by my decision to brief a woman. If he wants to brief a male only for that reason, that's his decision, but he doesn't stand by it. And he emails me later in the day to say, just to let you know, I've sent that letter, and I've sent that letter to the client, and unfortunately, people in this world are being briefed not for who they are, but for the wrong reasons. Words to that effect.
What these wrong reasons, do they boil down to, I want an aggressive barrister?
The big boomy voice.
The boomy voice.
When Francis was convener, I remember being particularly apoplected. I'd been involved in a... I'd been around for a good few years by that stage, and I'd been involved in a domestic building dispute, which was for a reasonably small amount, but for an instructing solicitor who was in his 50s, who was acting for one of his mates, a solicitor also in his 50s, and I'd done the pleadings, and we got all the way up to the mediation, and I suddenly thought, oh, the brief hasn't arrived for the mediation. I rang him up and said, oh, where's the brief for the mediation? And he said, oh, look, I have to tell you, and he was so sheepish about it. He said, we've decided to go, well, he wants a big boomy voice. And I just couldn't believe that for what was essentially a $20,000 claim at that point in time, that these two blokes in their 50s, both solicitors, would decide that it was a big boomy voice. And to add insult to injury, I was opposed to counsel who'd been at the bar for 2 years and another member of council who was delightful but had come and confided to me that she'd never run a case before. And they felt that they had to get a big boomy voice to do this mediation. The mediation didn't settle, and when he rang me up, he told me I had the intellect to do the hearing, but not the mediation because they wanted the big boomy voice. So I was naturally very polite about all of this.
Don't you think, Carolyn, that is the core of the problem? They can't say we're not smart enough, and so they say we're not tough enough.
But I had a solicitor ring me to say he'd briefed me in a maternity leave claim for a woman, and he rang up and said, look, I'm really embarrassed, but she wants a man. She doesn't think you'll be aggressive enough. And I actually heard myself say, I can be aggressive. I was so cross. But I think part of the point was it's not just the solicitors. It's the perceptions of the clients, and it's not just men.
Maybe there's a perception of culture, not just at the bar, but in the general population, that women respond in anger in a certain way, that we're covert, that we're shrill, that we have certain modes of behaving that they don't think will translate to a courtroom, and they prefer a machismo or a male style of outward aggression.
I'm not prepared to say that about the general population.
Well,
I think the
I don't
general
know,
population
but
recognise that women are just as good as men. They don't decide who gets the breast. It's the solicitors with all their prejudices. The general population, by and large, want someone who's good at their job and tough at their job. And
but then
most
the solicitors are
women I know at this
filtering.
bar are both those things. It's not clients, it's
I
solicitors.
disagree. I think it's often clients.